a personal trainer and an instructor at Leopard Body Fitness, and I'm also an avid runner. I am here to tell you a little bit about strength training for runners and how I incorporate that into my training throughout the year. So during the off season, I like to strength train around 3 or 4 times a week, but while I am training for something like a half marathon or a marathon, I generally only strength train 1 or 2 times a week, just to make sure that my priority stays running. Strength training is an important part of any sort of running program. 1, for injury prevention, and 2, because it will actually make you faster and stronger and able to go for longer when you go out for your runs. So there are 3 ways that I like to incorporate strength training. The first one is a strong main lift, so things like squats or deadlifts, that you can use a barbell or dumbbells, and you can increase weight as you go and get stronger. The second is your accessory work. That's things like unilateral movement or plyometrics that we're going to go over in a little bit as well. And then the third way is mobility and core. So I'm going to go through quite a few of those over the next few videos, but for now we're going to stay with that main lift. So squats and deadlifts, and then some accessory work as well. So like I mentioned, the 2 main movements that I like to do while I'm building strength throughout my run programming are things like squats and deadlifts. So I'm going to show you both and a couple variations of the deadlift as well. So the first one would be with dumbbells. You can also do these in class with a barbell. Our strength and conditioning classes are actually great for incorporating all of these things together. But if you can't make it to a class, a good alternative is the open gym, or maybe you're at home and you've got some weights there, so you can use those. So I will grab my 2 dumbbells. I'm going to pop them up onto my shoulders. Make sure they're there nice and strong. My feet are going to come about hip distance apart. My toes will come out. I'm looking up and keeping my chest up nice and tall, and then I'm going to screw my feet into the ground, and that's going to make sure that my knees track over my toes rather than caving in as I come down. So I'm going to squeeze onto the floor. I look up. I'm going to come down into that squat and push back up. Down into that squat, keeping that chest up the whole time, bracing my core, and I would do about 5 sets of 5 reps as I go. So as I mentioned, the next movement I like to do is deadlifts. So you can do these with a dumbbell. You can even do them with 1 dumbbell. You can do them with a barbell. You can do them with a kettlebell. I'm going to show you 2 different versions, one with our dumbbells and one with a kettlebell. So the first is with those set of dumbbells. So we're going to bring our feet back just underneath our hips here, roll those shoulders back nice and strong. And I want it to be almost like you're trying to squeeze an orange with your armpits. So they're nice and strong, your lats are engaged, and then I'm going to send the hips back, keeping that back nice and flat, and I like to come to about mid-shin, stand all the way up, and then back down. So you should feel a little bit of a stretch through that hamstring, and we should be using those hamstrings and glutes to come all the way back up. Now you want to make sure that those dumbbells stay against the legs. We don't want them out here. Nice and strong against the body, and back up to stand. Key things here are that you don't want to round through your back, and you want to make sure that you are using a weight that's appropriate. If we're using something that's too light, we'll end up seesawing back and forth and not able to engage the proper muscles. And if we use one that's too heavy, we might round for the back, or if we go a little bit too far down, we might round for the shoulders as well. So your other option is to bring in that kettlebell, and same thing, I'm going to set up this way so you can kind of see as I set up how we do it. We bring those feet just outside of the handle here. I'm going to roll my shoulders back again. I'm going to send my hips back again. My chest is nice and strong. I'm going to grab hold of the kettlebell, and almost like I'm trying to break it, and that's going to squeeze our armpits in, just like we're trying to squeeze that orange. 3, 2, 1, we come all the way up to stand. Tap down to the ground and stand back up. So in both versions of this deadlift, you want to think of it like a leg press. So we are pushing the ground away rather than pulling something up along with us. And like I said, we would do about 5 sets, somewhere between 4 and 6 of 4 to 6 reps. So about 20 reps total, with about a minute or so in between to take some rest. All right, so the next set of exercises that we're going to do our accessory work. So these are really good for things like injury prevention and targeted movements for different parts of your bodies. So the next set of movements that we're going to get into is our accessory work. So things like kettlebell deadlifts, unilateral movement, so single-sided movements, hamstring curls, calf raises, split squats, all things that we're going to do on one side of our body versus the other, just to isolate that strength in one leg versus the other, and then also working on very specific muscle groups. So thinking the calves, the posterior chain, so hamstrings and glutes, our quads and our anterior chain right here. We'll do a little bit of hip flexors as well, and then a little bit of the back. So 4 movements, and I'm going to show you what they look like. So the first one that we're going to do is the single leg deadlift, and that works really nicely as an accessory movement for our regular deadlifts if we've just done that before. And the single leg deadlift is great because not only is it great for our posterior chain, it is also a really good exercise for ankle mobility because our knee has to track over our toes. So I'm going to show you a couple of different options. I'm going to use a kettlebell here. You can also use a set of dumbbells, and I actually prefer that if you're going to be using them for the first time. If you've never done a single leg deadlift, it'll help keep your shoulders back and straight, but for this video, we're going to use a kettlebell. So we're going to line up that kettlebell with our foot that's going to be standing. So that's going to make sure that we go all the way down and come back up in a straight line, and we're not bringing it too far forward or too close to the body. Okay, so we're going to set up on that one foot nice and strong. I'm going to roll my shoulders back, almost like I'm trying to bring my shoulder blades together, and then I'm going to reach down towards that kettlebell and pick it all the way back up. You can stop with your foot, or you can try and hover if you want it a little bit more difficult. We're going to bring it all the way back down. We tap the ground and bring it back up again. So I would do about 6 to 8 of those per side and then switch before I move on to my next movement. And the key here is really using the core as well to make sure that we are not twisting through that leg. So if I'm going to switch sides here that way, we want to make sure that we're coming all the way down and our hips are facing the ground the whole time so that we're not coming out or over to the opposite side. Injury prevention, very important. Your next one's going to be your hamstring curls. So maybe you have an exercise ball at home. We definitely have a few here at Love Your Body. So we will bring this in. And again, there are a lot of variations on this, but for today we're going to use the ball, and we're only going to use one leg at a time. So I'm going to show you on this side. I'm going to prop my left leg up on our ball, and I'm going to come into a glute bridge on the opposite side. So my low back is going to come to the floor. I'm going to push through that right foot, and then I'm going to roll that ball using that posterior chain, using those hamstrings into my body. Excellent. And again, we would do something like 6 to 8 on one side, 6 to 8 on the other. If you'd like to make it a little bit more difficult, you can prop both feet up. Again, we're going to push all the way up, and then we're going to roll that ball into our body, and then back out. Coming back down at the very end. So our second last one is going to be those calf raises. Really good for injury prevention, especially with the calves, because our calves take the brunt of a lot of our running. We hit the ground with that foot, and then we spring off when we come into our run, so we're pushing off from the ground, and if we're not using our posterior chain, all of that weight can really move its way to the calves. So this, paired with mobility and stretching, is actually going to be really good for your run in the long run. So I'm using an elevated surface. I have a plate here. You can use something like a stair. I like to make sure I have something set up, so I'll be using the rig today, but you can use your hands up against a wall, and this is a really easy way to stretch through those calves, but also build some strength as we go. So we're going to come on to our elevated surface, 1 foot at a time, and I've got my hands up against what would be a wall, probably at your house, a rig here at Love Your Body, and we are going to make sure that we come up evenly on that foot. So we're coming all the way up to stand, and I'm not on one side of my foot or the other, so I want to make sure that I'm nice and straight along that mid part of the foot, and then I'm going to come down, and then all the way back up, and then back down. So again, I started to teeter in just a little bit here. We want to make sure that we stay straight, and then pushing off. And you would do something like 4 to 6 on one side, maybe even 8 to 10, and then switch sides over to the other foot, and you want to make sure of the same thing. Now, most of us will have some sort of imbalance. I know that I have a much stronger left side than I do right, even though I'm right-handed. I've also had an injury in my calf previously, so I find that with this foot, I tend to teeter from one side to the other, and that's where that wall becomes really important. So making sure that we have a surface that'll make sure that we don't fall off of our elevated surface is very important for injury prevention as well. Our next one is going to be our split squats. Sometimes these are called static lunges, and you can do them with or without weight. So especially if you're first starting out, a really good option is to just come into that split squat. So we bring one foot ahead of us and one foot behind us, but making sure that they're on a different track. So we want to make sure that our hips are in line with our toes. So if we bring back this one here, we're going to be in an inline lunge, and that's not going to be what we're looking for. We want to make sure that we've got enough space in between our feet. I'm going to tip forward just slightly here and come down into that lunge, and still looking ahead to try and keep that chest up. 2, 3, and again, you could even go somewhere between 6 and 12 reps of this one. You'll feel it in your quads. You'll definitely feel it in that posterior chain with your glutes and your hamstrings. And then another great option, and the reason I have this bench out here, is our Bulgarian split squat. So you can grab one weight at your chest, or 2 up on your shoulders, or down by your sides, and then you're going to hop one foot up behind you. So the easiest way I've found to get into this one is kick your feet forward, bring one foot back behind you, and this is where we are going to stand. So I'm going to bring my left foot up, and you can be up on the toes or down. It is all a matter of personal preference. Ooh, I'm falling over. And this is a really great one for your core and your balance too. I like to call that sneaky core. So we're going to look ahead, come down towards the floor, and back up. So we're looking for the hamstring on the front leg to be parallel with the floor, and the knee on the back leg to be intending down towards the floor. And we would do something like 4 to 6 on one side, 4 to 6 on the other, with a short break in between. And those are all movements that I would do to supplement the 2 exercises that I would do in the beginning. So something like a squat or a deadlift, like I mentioned, and then we would do a little bit more accessory work later. I think that's all I have for this particular video. So stay tuned for more, because we've got some videos on hip flexors and core and mobility and stuff for runners. So I hope you join me for those as well. Thank you.